Right, this one is going to get me into trouble, folks. I want to talk to you today about why you're not already slim. And as a warning, you might not like it. You might not like what I have to say today, but I feel absolutely obligated to say it. Nobody else is saying this. So what I'm about, or very few people I should say, to be fair, are saying this. So what I do have to say today, absolutely in my mind, needs to be said. But, word of warning, you might not like the idea of it. Let me just sort my camera out. We'll wait for the chat to build here. I might, because I know you guys love it, do some Q&A after we're done here today with my little topic. Excuse me whilst I mess around with my camera here. So we might do that. So you can post your questions in the chat just in case. No promises that I'll get around to them. We might get into that. I don't know. But really, that's not my focus today. As I said, today I want to talk to you primarily about why you're not already slim. Now, you might be thinking, Rye, I'm on the path to weight loss here. Why is this video relevant to me? What am I actually going to benefit from this video? What am I actually going to learn today? This is so key so that you don't slide backwards. The principles, the analysis I think that I'm going to share with you today is so key to stop you, to prevent you from going back from where you originally came, because that's so important. Weight loss is one thing, but then actually maintaining these results for life, that's frankly an art form for many people, folks. It really is. So I've got my notes here. I've got the camera set up. I've got my laptop set up so I can see your questions as they come in, but largely I want to talk about this very important subject today. You know, this is what I'm about to say will strike you as being really obvious, but it does need to be said. At an individual level, it's obviously about the food. The exercise too, but primarily about the food. The reason why you're not already slim is because quite simply, you're making poor food choices. Whether that's in a sense, A, maybe eating reasonably well, but too much perhaps, or B, eating lots of junk food or a little bit of junk food, whatever it might be, that takes you to that point where you end up gaining weight. So at an individual grassroots level, obviously it's about the food, but you guys, if you've been following me for a while, you know I have to go one further than that. You know I have to look a bit deeper than that. I often talk about the idea of nutrition and exercise being these surface level factors for weight loss, the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, and as you go deeper, that's where you find these underlying trends. Maybe they are to do with you and your psyche, maybe they're more cultural and therefore permeating into your thinking. Whatever it is, maybe it's, you know, greater macro factors, maybe it's things happening globally that have affected you today and your health and weight loss efforts. Regardless though, that is where, I mean, we can think of these things, I describe them in my book Mind Mastery as these invisible forces. These are the things that often drive those food and exercise decisions. So, whilst objectively, it's probably easiest, isn't it, to talk about the food and the exercise from a weight loss point of view, and that's why we do spend so much time talking about those things, and they are, of course, measurably important. But what drives those things is often where we also need to place some attention as well. You guys know my focus on that. So yeah, at an individual level, the reason why you're not slim today, we can very conclusively say it, and of course there's occasionally an exception to the rule, some person with an underlying health condition, for example. These are very rare circumstances. Obviously there are always exceptions to the things I share here. But we can obviously say that at an individual level, the reason why you're not slim today, it's about the food, seconded by the exercise, but it's primarily about the food. But that isn't what I want to share with you today. That isn't what I want to share with you. And what I'd like to start with is hitting you with some data, some frightening data here from worldpopulationreview.com. This is obesity, percentages of obesity amongst the general population for various countries around the world. So we'll start towards the bottom of the list. I'm not going to cover every country here. There's a reason why I've picked certain countries, and you'll start to see how I string things together here for my analysis. Thailand, 10%. 10% of the overall population classed as obese. Remember, there's a difference between obesity and being overweight as well. This is the harsher end. This is the more radical end of the spectrum. This is just obesity today we're talking about with this data. Moldova, Eastern Europe, 18.9%. Switzerland, Central Europe, 19.5%. Italy, 19.9%. Slovenia, 20.2%. The Netherlands, 20.6%. Serbia, again, Eastern Europe, there's a trend there, 21.5%. Germany, 22.3%. Romania, 22.5%. Okay. Russia, 23.1%. It's actually slightly higher than I thought. Czech Republic, 26%. Again, higher than I thought. I've just been there recently. South Africa, 28.3%. Mexico, 28.9%. I've actually missed one. It's my own country, the UK, which is actually the highest in Europe. Aside from Malta, I believe, is 27.8%, a staggering 27.8% of the population obese, not just overweight, obese. So there's still a massive clique of people, a huge swathes of people rather, that are overweight anyway. This is just obese. Mexico, 28.9%, Australia, 29%, Canada, 29.4%, New Zealand, 30.8%. That surprised me, being quite so high. I thought it'd be up there. The US, of course, a whopping 36.2%. There's a bunch more. We can talk about Nauru, we could talk about 61%, we could talk about Cook Island, 55.9%. But I want to stick to those. The reason why I want to stick to those, my watch time, 57% of my watch time over the last 28 days has come from the US. From the UK, only 9.9%, still high. Canada, 5.5%, Australia, 4.2%. This is where my audience comes from. Those countries are very high up this list, extremely high up this list. Of course, there's a bunch of other people that watch my videos. You know, we can talk about, we could talk, really to do a full analysis of my audience, we'd have to talk about the population of those countries and then sort of measure how proportionate all of those things are, yada, yada, yada. I don't want to get into the details about this. The point is, my audience tends to be from countries where obesity is extremely prevalent, worryingly so. There's something to that. There's something to that. Okay, Thailand, 10%. 10%. Now again, we can talk about what these countries are eating because of course, objectively, this makes a massive, massive difference. But my point here, really, is that you're a product of your environment. And that's the big enchilada that I've got to share today. The reason why you're not already slim is because you can get away with it. And that might be your inner circle. That might be one, first and foremost, actually most importantly, your own standards. By your own standards, you are letting yourself get away with not being slim. Your friends and family, maybe they're not giving you pressure. Maybe they don't give you, and I know this is startling to people, maybe they don't give you enough negative press. Maybe they don't criticize you enough for being overweight right now. That is absolutely possible. Maybe your culture and society as a whole doesn't do it, and therefore, of course, your family, your inner circle don't do it. Of course, you don't do it because the whole culture is conditioned otherwise. And this is what I want to talk about today. You're a product of your environment. The reason why you're not slim right now, even if you're on the way, is because you can get away with it. Because you can get away with it. And that is huge. That is absolutely huge, okay? In my culture, because obviously we can talk about the West as a whole, and obviously the West as a whole, different countries, obviously the West is a rather large bracket of countries, isn't it? What do we mean by that particularly? Again, not getting into the semantics. The West as a whole, there are trends, there are patterns, even with the individual countries in the West, where we can start, I can draw comparisons between the UK and the US, and I've just traveled to Czech Republic for a bit as well. There's things that you notice as a human being. There's things you pick up on, okay? You might not always get the truest picture of a country you've visited, but there are patterns and trends you can pick up on. But what I do want to talk about largely today is my culture here in the UK, okay? And even within the UK culture, there's a bunch of subcultures, but generally I'm going to talk about the UK here today. No accountability for being overweight. Frankly, it's an absolute disgrace. It's nothing short of a disgrace. And of course, there'll be some people here offended, who aren't even British, of course, offended by how perhaps disparagingly I speak of my own country here, but this needs to be said. This is my home, but it absolutely needs to be said. There is no responsibility in this culture. This is a youngster saying this as well, remember. There's no responsibility in this culture. And this is very obvious with weight. There is absolutely a blame game that happens in this culture. You absolutely see it everywhere. Now again, I don't know how this compares to elsewhere. There might be people from the US, there might be people from Canada watching this going, Ryan, it's exactly the same here, my friend, yada, yada, yada. I do think this is a product of the Western world, a byproduct of where the West has gone. But certainly here in the UK, there is a huge lack of responsibility for weight. It is my mother's genetics, my mother had a slow metabolism, it is this, it is blah, I'm big boned, blah, 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 blah. All of the responsibility goes elsewhere. We have plausible deniability in huge swathes here in the UK. It is awful. It is absolutely awful. Again, more data here. Almost 7 out of 10 men and 6 out of 10 women in the UK are overweight, according to gov.uk. So that's not just obesity, that's overweight. Almost 7 out of 10 men and 6 out of 10 women in the UK are overweight, according to gov.uk. Now again, just go back to the food, because we can't rule this out. Affordability, accessibility. It's no longer that rich countries, no longer rich countries that just have exclusive rights to obesity crises, okay? Fruit is way more expensive in the UK than junk food. You can get a packet of Oreos or a packet of biscuits here for 50 British pence. How much is, okay, apples, pears maybe slightly cheaper than other fruits, but you know, you look at those berries, you look at grapes or something, you're talking certainly £3 for organic, certainly £3 for a punnet of organic grapes, 250 to 500 grams organic, 500 grams organic grapes. You're talking £3.50, £4 maybe at the upper echelons. Okay, more expensive than junk foods in many cases. So no longer is it, I believe that well, you see this in the data, that rich countries are the one that suffer from obesity, which is how it used to happen, which many decades ago was very much the trend. That pattern has gone. Accessibility too, of course, here in the UK. Uber Eats, Deliveroo for my fellow Brits. I don't think that's elsewhere, but Deliveroo. Supermarkets everywhere now. Pubs, restaurants, okay. Food has just been made outrageously convenient. It's been made so convenient that people part their money for it. People will part with their hard-earned cash to get food delivered to them rather than making it themselves. That's how convenient and affordable food is today. That people will pay money for it to be delivered to their house versus go to the supermarket where it's much cheaper and assemble it themselves. They will actually pay for that convenience. That's how good we've got it. Okay, I mean, you can objectively say this is a byproduct of, you know, sort of positive development in the West, couldn't you? In terms of people's financial freedoms in the West, certainly in the UK. But wow, hasn't it gone too far? Hasn't it gone too far? And now you can use these services to eat cleanly. That's the important thing to stress. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I go to the supermarket and I get a ready-made meal that is super, super clean. Maybe a nice salad or something like that. Yesterday I went out and I had a nice falafel kebab, which falafel bunch of veggies in a pita bread. Or a pita style flatbread rather. Wasn't too bad. Wasn't the cleanest thing in the world, but certainly the best thing on the menu for me personally. Is that what most people are doing when they're eating out or ordering in or going to the supermarket, whatever it is? Of course not. Of course that's not what most people are doing, okay? This is huge. You know, the food component of this is huge. But what's the big thing that nobody is talking about? What's the big thing that statisticians aren't even measuring themselves? It's the culture. It's the culture. It is totally, here's the bottom line, it is, because I'm doing a lot of rambling, but it is totally acceptable right now in the UK to be overweight. It's completely fine. It's completely acceptable. You'd have been bullied for it 50 or 60 years ago. If I talked to my granddad about what weight issues were like, you know, when he was on the up and coming in, you know, his 10s and 20s, my goodness, you'd have been bullied silly. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but you'd have been bullied silly for carrying even 10 pounds of extra body weight. 10 pounds of extra body weight. It's totally flipped here in the UK. It's totally acceptable to be overweight here in the UK. Moreover, I would even argue, and I can find many examples of this, especially in mainstream culture, in mainstream news outlets and whatnot, where it's actually pandered to. Being overweight is even pandered to nowadays. It's gone from just being acceptable to being pandered to. It's okay, you're big boned, and my mum had a slow metabolism, genetics, as I said earlier. Love yourself at any size. This is literally a mantra that you hear constantly now in British culture. Love yourself at any time, any size. And I believe that this is something that isn't exclusive to the UK, but the body positivity movement and where that's gone, my goodness, although one could argue when it first started, there were lots of good sentiments there. We shouldn't have unrealistic expectations about body and whatnot. And we shouldn't be putting we'll get into this in a second, but we shouldn't be putting only a certain type of person up on a role model, up on a pedestal, as a role model for their aesthetics. And we shouldn't overrate, you know, aesthetics too much versus personality and whatnot, and all these inherent values versus just looking at the aesthetics all the time, the superficial. So I get a lot of the sentiment, but it's gone so far, the body positivity stuff. Love yourself at any size. I mean, objectively, from a health perspective, it's an absolute nightmare. What a nightmare that is. What a doctor says to that idea, I don't know. If I was a doctor, I'd be I'm cringing because I'm a weight loss coach at that sort of thing when I hear that sort of stuff. But this is seriously a popular idea here in the UK, that you should love yourself no matter the size you're at. Again, I get the sentiment behind it, but boy, oh boy, can you see how that's dangerous. I know a lot of my viewers will agree with me on this. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so keen to lose weight, no doubt. I mean, TV commercials here. And I don't watch a lot of TV, like regular TV, if you like. What do you call it? Terrestrial, digital TV. But they are packed now with overweight people. TV commercials in the UK absolutely packed now with overweight people. On purpose, by the way. On purpose, okay? For the sake of diversity, this is. So, TV commercials no longer packed like they were with beautiful, slim, model-type folks, men and women. Beautiful, slim, so on and so forth. There has been a huge pushback against unrealistic beauty standards. And again, there's points of this argument that I can agree with. But the problem with this, the biggest problem I have with this, is that beauty is objective. So all of this nonsense about beauty being entirely subjective, it's in the eye of the beholder. Yeah, I get the point. There will be some people that find a certain type of person good looking and not. And friend groups, if you took a data set, if you took a bunch of people or a friend group and you put in front of them a bunch of people that might be considered beautiful by society standards, there might be disagreements amongst them, very minimal disagreements, though, I would argue. There might be disagreements, but beauty is absolutely objective. There are traits, speak to an anthropologist about this, speak to a scientist about this, there are traits that we find attractive. There are absolutely physical traits that we find attractive. So to deny this, and to de-pedestal beauty as much as we have, to the extent that we actually now promote being overweight, being obese, which is what I argue happens in the UK culture. It's not just accepted, it's now promoted because it's put in front of you in TV commercials with mantras such as love yourself at any size. Very dangerous. I don't need to lecture you guys on that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, obviously, but I don't need to lecture you on that. But we've got to this stage now where we deny that beauty is objective, which is absolutely laughable in my assessment. It is totally objective. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Well, sort of. But again, broadly speaking, there are things that people find beautiful in other people. Physically. Okay. Also emotionally. Also mentally. Also in a personality sense as well. But physically, these things are absolutely measurable. There is a certain look that people like. There is a certain appeal about, women to a heterosexual man, women with large breasts. Women with wide hips, there's a certain look. So much of this is absolutely primed in us biologically as well, by the way. But all men know this, all heterosexual men acknowledge this. So, and vice versa. I don't have to give all the examples, but objectively, beauty is absolutely objective, but we've rid ourselves of that. Now, you might be thinking, Ryan, this is a random rant. How does this relate to the topic I clicked? If you're just joining the stream now, you're probably like, what on earth's going on here? How on earth is Ryan going to teach me about anything in this video today? Well, the reason why I talk about all of this stuff is because we've just rid ourselves of this. We now have a culture in the UK, and in many parts of the West, I believe, but I'm speaking specifically about the UK here because that's my experience. We now have a culture in the UK where it's acceptable to be overweight. Not just acceptable, it's now promoted more and more so, to a really dangerous degree. What does that make you if you are a fellow Brit? What does that make you if you live in the UK? If you're seeing these things constantly, if you're drinking the proverbial Kool-Aid of this stuff, do you think you have better chances than if you lived in Thailand, where 10% of the population is classed as obese, versus the UK at 27.8, almost triple? Where do you fancy your chances? Thailand, obviously. Why? Because people are a byproduct of their environment. Whether that's in a macro sense, the whole culture, whether it's our clique of friends. Because remember, if you've got a strong clique of friends, if your family is really active, cares about health, and you growing up as a child, weight was often mentioned in the family, and often the parents were trying to enforce healthy habits on you and encourage you to follow a healthy lifestyle, that could really counteract, that could really outweigh society as a whole. So that's possible too. But either way, the point I'm trying to illustrate here is that everything outside of you is going to influence you. You can be resistant to that or you can be sensitive to that. I'm going to give you the secrets of how to be resistant to that later. By the way, I'm not just rambling here. There is going to be some actionable advice. But it's important that I just run through all of this. This is just my theory. Obviously, you're free to disagree. Let me know in the chat. But this is absolutely massive. This is absolutely massive. So, yeah, where do you fancy your chances? Thailand at 10%? Or the UK at 27.8%? Or the US at 36.8%? New Zealand at 30.8% of the population being obese. This isn't just obese. Overweight, If you count the overweight folk, these numbers go up exponentially. They absolutely do. So this is just those classed as clinically obese. And we can get into the standards and definitions for that. I would often argue that some of these criteria for when somebody is classed as overweight and obese, I would actually say in some cases they're very lenient as well, which could, if, for example, if it was my framework, that would inflate these numbers even further. But hey ho, let's just take these numbers for what they are. They're still astronomically high. They're still really, really concerning. So where do you fancy your chances, okay? Just to repeat, for those just joining the chat, my bottom line here today, the main sort of mantra I want to leave you with is the reason why you're not already slim, which is why you've clicked on this video, is titled, Why You're Not Already Slim. The reason why you're not already slim is because you can get away with it. Whether that's because of your own standards, your family standards, your friends' standards, or society as a whole standards, you can get away with it. In the West, it seems to be totally destroyed from a weight loss point of view. Sounds like I'm really dramatizing, but the way that being overweight, being obese is now accepted in the UK, it is absolutely crazy. It is absolutely crazy. It's likely, if you've spent some time here, you've seen it yourself. It is unbelievable. Again, had a couple of weeks in Prague, capital of the Czech Republic, for those not so good on their geography. Best part of a month back now. You know, that's why I was really surprised to hear that Czech Republic's figure is 26%, which is actually only 1% lower than the UK. I suppose then you actually might have to do an analysis what was in terms of what Prague is like versus the rest of that country. That'll make a difference too. Maybe I was just seeing one part of it. Well, I literally was seeing one part of the country, and maybe it's different elsewhere. It does seem to be that in European cities, people do tend to be more slim based on the data versus those in the rest of the country. So in cities, people do, and there's a bunch of reasons for that, but people do tend to be more mindful of their weight when they're living in a city. Lots of reasons, again, largely to do with age, I argue, but also salary and various other things too. So maybe that sort of skews what I saw versus this 26%. But when I was in Prague, honestly, I very rarely saw an overweight person. I'm not on the lookout for it, but after a while, you are more, there's lots of things, it's pattern recognition. There's things happening that I don't even have control over. So suddenly when you see an overweight person in Prague, it stands out to you more than it does here. Not because I'm going around looking for overweight people, not that I've got anything against somebody just by virtue of them being overweight. Of course not. I shouldn't have to say that, but I'm going to say that. But simply because of this biological pattern recognition, you suddenly see someone that's overweight in Prague and it really stands out to you because you're not all that used to seeing it. These things happen so subconsciously in many cases. So that was really startling. And, I've known about this for a while, but it really refreshed it in my mind. When I do travel elsewhere, you do really see this, depending on, of course, where you go. Just to get back to my point earlier, the problem is beauty is beauty is objective. It's not subjective. Yet we're acting nowadays like it's subjective. We are acting nowadays, we are prioritizing nowadays people's feelings over what is actually best for them. We would rather put people on a TV commercial who are overweight with this messaging of, it doesn't matter the way you look, you can still buy these clothes, you can still get this. I know these companies are just catering to their audience. Again, this is a cultural problem I've got versus individuals or companies, let's say. This is a cultural issue and it just permeates, it just seeps into everything. It's nasty, toxic stuff, it really is. But we've now got to the stage where this is being heralded, where this is okay, where even being overweight is to a degree put on a pedestal. And you might think I'm exaggerating here. Go and watch some British TV, folks. It is literally like this now. We are so now in pursuit of diversity that it doesn't matter who goes on camera. We just stick them on camera. We stick them in front of people and we say this is how it should be. And we protect feelings so much so that we are in denial of lots of basic human truths, like such as there is a healthy body weight, that it is not wise, it is absolutely provable that you have a lower quality of life when you're overweight. For many, many reasons, for many, beyond just the health aspect of it, for many, many reasons. So we're in denial of so many of these universal human truths that we all sort of know when we sit down and really think about it. It doesn't take a lot of arguing for people to get on board with me on this. But we're in denial of this. And British culture is absolutely in denial of this because it's become so accepting of everyone and everything, regardless. Which again, there's principles one can agree with on this. But you can see the danger. You can see the danger. I absolutely see the danger every single day when I walk around here in the UK and there's overweight people everywhere. Again, I'm not going out looking for it. It's just what you notice. It's just where it is, just how it is here now. And it's really awful. And you as somebody that wants, if you're watching this channel, you as somebody that wants to fix these things in your life, that wants to lose a bit of weight, you need to be aware of how the macro environment can really influence you, how the culture can really influence you. Of course, my message here is not to leave the UK or the US or the West. That's not my argument here. You need to become more resistant to it though. You need to know how, you need to realize how you've been conditioned in the culture you're in, not to get too conspiratorial here. I don't think it is conspiratorial, we all know this. You are conditioned to the culture you're in, you see it in a certain way as a result of how you've grown up. And again, your family can shield you from this to a certain degree, but when you get to 18, what's gonna happen? You go out into the world, you figure out yourself, you become separate from your family, you have different ideas, you have different philosophies. There is a way you start to live your life more uniquely, let's say, than when you are a dependent child. And so you can be shielded from your family, but what happens when you're 18 and you go off to university like I did, and then you start eating a bit more junk? I was already eating junk growing up a little bit. My parents did well with me, actually, I argue, from a health perspective. I only really gained a bunch of, I was skinny fat as a youngster, but I only actually really gained a bunch of weight when I went off to university, and then all these options open up, of course. So the culture's going to get you at some point. That's what I would say to you, probably in your adult years. It's going to catch up with you. For some of you, it did before that. Of course, we don't want to idolize. This is important to mention as well. I've got a couple of notes here, folks. So if I'm looking away from the camera, it's only because I'm looking at my notes. I wanted to get across everything deliver as much as I could today. Of course, we don't want to idolize completely unattainable things too much, with the example being sort of like, especially for young men, like jack dudes on Instagram that often, in the vast majority of cases, have taken PEDs, have taken steroids, have taken testosterone, making it unrealistic, making this something that, of course, we don't want to promote, although they don't actively often say, by the way, I'm using this, guys. Please remember this when you're following me. Hey-ho, that's a different debate. That's another thing that needs tackling in a live stream from me at some point, secret steroid use. It's absolutely rampant, especially on YouTube and Instagram. Mental. It's crazy. People just don't realize. People are so unaware of it. We don't want to put those sorts of steroid physiques up on a pedestal for young men because it's totally unattainable. And in the same way for women, lots of examples too. We don't want too many unattainable standards that makes people feel absolutely crappy, excuse my language, but crappy about themselves. But it is life, and beauty is objective, and it is important to aspire to beauty as well. It helps with a functioning society. Again, I don't want to be totally superficial, but there is a reason for these things. There is a reason why we find certain things and certain people beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. Like, this is hardwired in us. I'm not interested in denying nature so much that I would rip every beautiful person off a TV advert. This is actually happening in the UK. It's crazy. So again, the solution to this is a complex debate, but the solution to this is not to promote being overweight. It's not to promote being unattractive. It's not to promote being unhealthy. But that is the solution that's now being put forward in the UK and in many parts of the West, I'm sure. To be very clear, I don't care if somebody is overweight. And again, I said this earlier, for some reason, I wish I didn't, but I do feel the need to stress this because people are so easily offended by these issues nowadays. It's so taboo, which can be no good. It shouldn't be taboo in the slightest, should it? But I just want to stress it. I don't care if somebody is overweight. I don't immediately see them as inferior or lesser. I will see other aspects of their character too. But we can objectively say, this is the problem with it, we can objectively say that it's not a good thing that that person is overweight. So if I meet somebody and they're overweight, aka a great many of my clients, by the way, I'm interacting a large portion of my day with overweight people who are measurably overweight. I don't even think about it. I don't even care. I get to know the person, I help them fix the problem, good, done. But Like when I'm talking to them on the phone, I'm not thinking you're overweight, you're overweight, you're overweight. I know them as a person. I don't care. I don't care. But that doesn't mean that we deny the truth. The truth being that we can all recognize that being overweight is objectively not a good thing for your life. And that goes beyond just health, but primarily in a health sense. So, yeah, we can objectively say that actually for that person it's not good, and for society as a whole it's not good. The burden on society, the burden on a country and a government that has a great many of its citizens that are overweight is absolutely massive. You're seeing a great many problems with the NHS here in the UK right now. So again, this is a line I used earlier, but in the UK, we're now in the business of protecting people's feelings versus what is actually best for them. We would rather say, there, it's fine, you look beautiful the way you are, rather than, to be honest, my friend Sandra, my friend Daniel, you are carrying a bit too much extra weight. I love you. Let me know how I can support you. But I would say that you need to lose. Oh, that's so offensive. Oh, I can't believe. Oh, we would rather protect the feeling than actually tell that person what is best for them. That's the state we've arrived at. That's not happening in lots of these other countries. You go to Eastern Europe. That's not how people talk to one another. They do things a lot more bluntly there. And this is where the West is going to lose, and it is losing right now. This is why, okay, there are some exceptions to this. I mentioned, places like Mexico in amongst all of this, and, all those small islands like Tonga and whatnot. But, the vast majority of the countries towards the top of this list are heavily westernized countries. That's why I was surprised that Russia's 23.1%. I mean, Russia's incredibly developed now, but you catch my drift here. It's still a lot lower, actually, isn't it, than the likes of the US? It's 13% lower than US obesity. But, Serbia, Slovenia, how many, for those that were here towards the start, I was listing various countries and their rates of obesity. And yeah, you do get a lot more Western Europe and like the US and Canada, New Zealand, Australia, as you go up the list. Interestingly, it's not a surprise. I predicted this. I've known this for years. But and when I say I predicted this, I don't mean I saw this coming 10 years ago. I don't mean anything like that. I mean when I Googled these statistics to jump on this live stream today, I roughly knew the order of this. I have looked at this before, but you can predict this order because, it's just doing a bit of traveling, as I've been fortunate enough to do. You see these things yourself. But in Prague, I just hardly saw anyone that was overweight. And just the way that people interact with each other there, beauty matters there. In Eastern Europe, beauty matters. In Western Europe, you can just be accepted the way you are because of these sorts of ideologies and philosophies. And I get it, I get some of these sentiments, but I think we've taken it so far. So yeah, you would get called names. You would, and it might not even be in a rude manner, but people might even give you constructive criticism in Eastern Europe, but you'd get it a lot more readily than you would here. You ain't getting people calling out each other for being overweight here anymore as much. You don't get it. And so I think we've gone too far with this stuff. I really do. We don't have that peer pressure in our society in the UK anymore that tells people that they ought to be slim. We don't have that. I don't feel that anywhere. I don't feel that at all. In fact, I feel the total opposite. I feel a lot of people tell me that I should gain weight, that I'm too skinny, yada, yada, yada. Even though by every metric, I'm absolutely fine. Absolutely fine, and the healthiest I've ever been in my entire life. Doesn't matter though, does it? You're too skinny, like, it's just pathetic. It's absolutely, we've just gone so far with it. What happens, these ideas, they just permeate into culture. They're everywhere. So, your friends have got these ideas, your family have got your ideas, your colleagues have got these ideas, you're seeing it on the TV, you're seeing it in every movie you start to watch nowadays. So what's going to happen to the average individual here in the UK? Do they have a good chance of being slim for the majority of their life? Do they have a good chance? Well, it's a reasonable one, but it's definitely lessening, isn't it, by that number? It's definitely lessening. And yeah, we can talk about the food, we can talk about the exercise. I think there's something deeper happening here culturally, and that's the argument that I'm outlining. But let me know in the chat what you folks think about this. I think there's a few comments coming in, but you all seem to be listening attentively on this one, so that's interesting. So I will get to those comments shortly. Please let me know what you think in the chat. Bottom line, it's become more and more acceptable to be overweight in the West, certainly here in the UK, that's visible. Talking about one's weight has become more and more taboo. You can get away with it. You can get away with being overweight. You can get away with being obese here in a manner that you cannot get away with it in other countries because of their cultures, because somebody would eventually say something to you. And it just goes, and these other cultures, they've got restaurants too. They've got more and more junk food being available too. They also have a different culture. Those things like the accessibility, the affordability of food, it has played a role. Be disingenuous of me to argue otherwise. But the culture in these countries, that is also allowing a difference in these obesity numbers, I would argue. These things permeate into the culture, as I say. It's nothing short of a disaster for me. It's a total failure. I can only talk about Britain on this, but it's a total failure, in my opinion, of British society. Inexcusable, soft, weak, again, protection of people's feelings versus saying what's absolutely best. So what's the solution for you? Because I'm doing a lot of ranting here. We've been going 35 minutes. I don't know what I've said for these 35 minutes. I didn't plan it to be this long. But we've been going 35 minutes. How do we actually now make this practical for you? Let me sort out this massive head of hair that I've got going on here. Clearly needs a good trim at some point soon. You will get to your questions soon, folks. Thank you. There's quite a few amassing there. Or your comments, at least. What do you have to do? You have to become resistant to the culture. You have to become less sensitive to this. You have to operate above the culture and escape it. Now, I'm not talking about leaving Britain, leaving the UK, leaving Australia, leaving Canada, and moving to Thailand or Eastern Europe or somewhere in Southeast Asia, somewhere else in Southeast Asia overnight, Kuala Lumpur. But you do have to sort of create your own little space. And this is an idea I've talked about quite a lot recently. I mentioned it on my mailing list. The bubble of excellence. You have to create your own bubble of excellence, which sounds like a very physical, tangible thing. I don't really mean it like that. It's more mental and emotional. It's more just an idea rather than an actual thing, quote unquote. But the bubble of excellence is your protected little safe space is absolutely not the right word, and that's not something I want to promote either on this. But this sort of own world that you have, where you become a lot more fierce, a lot more ruthless with screening the stimulus, the ideas, the thoughts, the comments that come in, the people that come in your bubble. You get a lot more meticulous about policing it so that you can maximize your success. If you don't manage your bubble, it's likely that you're not going to have much success in your life. And if you manage your bubble so that you can create success in your life, eventually it's going to work. You're going to make mistakes here and there, but it's about really quite simply, and we know this principle already, don't we? Setting your environment up for success is something I've talked about with weight loss all the time. Getting all the junk food out of your, freezer, out of your environment, okay? Setting up your environment for success, throwing away those takeaway menus that you've had for years and years and years and you can't help but look at every couple of days, and every week you order something in. And if you just simply got rid of those, you wouldn't have those things as a reminder. You wouldn't have the excuse. You might still make mistakes. You might still get takeout, but you're taking away these reminders. You're managing your environment. You're creating your bubble of excellence. And this is how you be robust. This is how you become less sensitive to the culture around you. You create your own world. You get fierce. You get ruthless with it. You think about your time and how you spend your attention a lot more. You start sort of having an assessment of the people in your life and thinking, is this person, I love this person. I have a lot of respect for this person, but do I necessarily benefit from this relationship? And that doesn't mean you cut that person out or you have an argument with them. This sounds a bit radical to people when I say this sort of thing. But it might mean that you need to manage the energy and attention you give to that particular relationship, because it might not be serving you right now in this manner. That doesn't mean you end the friendship or the relationship, the partnership, whatever it is. But it just means that you think a bit more consciously about what you let into your bubble. You become resistant. You operate above the culture. Okay, the culture's here. You need to go above it and not be so reactive to what's going on in your sphere, to reactive to what's going on the television, in mainstream culture, on the people you follow on Instagram, your friends and family members, your colleagues. One of your colleagues brings in donuts every Friday. You can either be reactive to that, you get dragged into that becomes part of your bubble. That's the culture of the place you're in. Or you operate above that and you've got another plan. So when those donuts come in, one, maybe there's another healthy food that you've got, or two, you do a lot of mental and emotional work. And this is why I promote this side of weight loss so much, talk about this side of weight loss so much about. I wrote a whole gosh darn, excuse my language, but I wrote a whole gosh darn book about it in Mind Mastery for Weight Loss. And so you do the mental and emotional work so that over time, I know it sounds impossible, but you can get there. Over time, you don't really crave the donut even when it's sitting in front of you. That you can resist it most of the time. You'll still be impulsive. You still got the human condition, obviously. You're still very much fallible, but you do that work, your taste buds change, your gut bacteria changes, you change your identity over time, you internally transform, you don't quite want the donut as much. And that can happen too. You create your own bubble. You are strong. You are resistant to the environment. You are robust. You are not fragile. You are not sensitive to it. That's the solution. So again, bottom line, before I jump into your questions, for those of you just joining, the reason why you're not already slim, to answer the title of this video, is because you can get away with it. That might be your standards, it might be your cultures. Excuse my weird little pen here. It might be your standards, or it might be your cultures. Regardless, you cannot be sensitive to it. The reason why you're overweight right now, we can talk about the food, we can talk about the exercise. Maybe, sadly, you do have an underlying condition which makes it harder for you to lose weight. Fair enough. But for the vast majority of people watching this, the reason why you're overweight right now is because you can get away with it. It's been allowed by yourself, by your loved ones, by the wider culture you're in, perhaps by your government in some kind of strange way as well. That's absolutely possible. I would say it's more your micro environment versus the macro environment in terms of what affects you. But we're all subject to this. So if you live in the US, where obesity is 36.2%, or the UK, where obesity is still very high but slightly lower at 27.8%, versus Thailand at 10%, what do you think your chances are of success? Okay, we can talk about the food accessibility and availability in those different places, but the culture's massively different too. The culture's massively different too. So, that's what I want to leave you with, okay? Have we had it too good in the West? Have we had it too good in the West? I don't know. That's a rather deep philosophical question, but it's a good one to end it on, I think. Have we had it too good? There's so much food thrust in our face nowadays, but to complement that, we also have a culture now where people aren't so responsible, especially my generation, doesn't feel like we're such an accountable, I'm part of this too, by the way, doesn't feel like we're such an accountable generation, doesn't feel like we'll call each other out on rubbish quite so much. We really have accepted obesity, we really have accepted people as being overweight, and it's clearly to our detriment. The numbers are there, the numbers are there. We can point to lots of other things. I think the culture has a massive influence. You have to be resistant to it, folks. Let me know your comments, let me know your thoughts. I've been going 42 minutes here. Let me grab a little sip of water before I jump into what you folks are saying about this. Joseph, adaptive thermogenesis, calorie reset, periodization method are all concepts I need light on. Thanks. Oh, making it nice and easy for me, Joseph. Only ask me the most complex question in the history of weight loss, adaptive thermogenesis. Look, I'm going to make a video. I am planning to do a live stream on metabolic damage, and I'll touch, of course, on adaptive thermogenesis in that live stream. I'm going to do this at some point. I'm not going to answer it now for you. It's such a complex subject, and I really need to be in the right frame of mind. I need to come planning out what I'm going to discuss in that live stream like I did for this one. I need to take some notes. I need to put all my thoughts on paper so I remember them when I start the live stream, because it's a really tricky subject. It really is to cover. So I'm not going to do it here and now. I do thank you for that question, though. It's also a good reminder for me to cover that more in the future, which I do intend to do. Gerard says, should I be aiming for a certain number of calories? I'm busy with your academy program, but I've not progressed far through it, just on the quick win series. Gerard, you're doing really well, my friend. Should you be aiming for a certain number of calories? Well, where do I start with this one? Maybe you should be. Maybe you should be. If you're losing weight right now and you're losing weight fairly effortlessly, I say fairly effortlessly, you're losing weight at a reasonable pace and it's not too slow and it feels somewhat easy to you, then no, you don't need to particularly worry about calories. It might be that one day you plateau and you need to be a bit more considerate. Does that mean you need to track them and aim for a certain number every day? Not necessarily. You could just make a change in your diet. That's what my periodization method, for any of my vegan, slim and sustained coaching clients, that's one of the goals of my periodization method. And this isn't to say that some of my clients don't look at their calories, because some of them do, so it'll be disingenuous to say otherwise. Most of them don't. Most of them just follow the periodization method, and that sort of takes care of their calories for them. I'm not going to explain what the periodization method is. You'll have to sign up with me to get the ins and outs of that. But that's a really clever way of bringing people's calories down without them actually having to track or even think about it so much, just by changing the emphasis on food groups and various things, frankly. So to answer your question, Gerard, should you aim for a certain number of calories? If you're losing weight comfortably right now, no, not yet. You don't need to worry about it so much yet. That said, I don't want you to go crazy with your calories or anything like that. I want you to still be mindful of them. But should you be tracking them and aiming for a certain number every day? No, I wouldn't even worry about it just yet. Tom says, hello all, welcome Tom, thanks for joining me here today. Michelle says, I totally agree with you, I'm frustrated seeing obesity celebrated and accepted. How do we even begin to reverse this mindset? Can't. Honestly, I'm a bit defeatist on this, Michelle, but I think the UK, I can only speak from the UK's perspective on this particular one, but I think the UK's lost on this. I think the UK's done on it. I can't see a good way back. I really can't. I don't think we'll get to a really bad point with it. I don't think it will continue to get worse and then we'll go, oh, this is so bad now that we have to change it. I don't see that point coming. I really, really don't. I think the UK is absolutely lost on this. I really do. I really do. And I know that's defeatist. I know that's pessimistic. That's honestly how I feel. I think you just have to be so resistant to the culture that it doesn't affect you. That's what you have to do. That's hard to do because we're a human being. Like, we're social creatures. Of course you're going to be sensitive to the culture. I still am. I'm not a freak of nature where I create my own bubble of excellence, as I said earlier, and I completely rebound anything that comes my way, any bad ideas that come my way. Like, again, I'm human. I've got the human condition, so these things still happen. But you have to be as resistant to it as you possibly can. That takes guts. That takes someone with fortitude. That takes someone with strength and discipline and their own self-belief that really is probably unparalleled amongst your peers. You really do have to be a top 1% in your self-belief to get slim in the UK just because of the culture we live in. So hence why so few people can do it in many cases. I mean, that and it's hard anyway, but the culture we're in certainly doesn't help. There's also a lot of people out there that don't really realise how overweight they are that live in the UK because of how we talk about obesity in the UK. They don't actually realise, even the word moobs, it's not really a word, is so, short for man boobs, is so normalised here that people say, oh, skinny but got moobs. Well, you might look skinny, but if you've got moobs, that's a sign that you're likely overweight. If you have a beer belly but you still got skinny arms, that doesn't mean that you're still slim. That doesn't mean you still don't... I've totally messed that one up. You still could be carrying excess body fat. It depends on a bunch of things. But the whole dad bod stuff as well. This stuff is so normalized. It's normal. That's what most people look like. Well, it might be what most people look like. Is that what's healthy? No. Health is the bottom line. Looks aside, the goal or standard should be what's acceptable and how we look. People put that aside. When it should be the focus. I somewhat agree, Viv, but I actually don't, because the two are intrinsically linked, aren't they? Healthy body weight will lead you to looking slimmer. Being of a healthy body weight is going to allow you to slim down. Studies show that slim people are more attractive. It's a win-win. You increase and by the way, being attractive leads to an increase in confidence. This is something that people actually get quite offended by, but being attractive usually leads, we can say this looking at the data, to a better quality of life. There's actually quite thorough studies on this, quite a thorough, portfolio, it's not quite the right word, of studies on this. So if you're attractive, chances are you're going to have a better quality of life. To be attractive, you want to be a healthy body weight. So I agree with you, health is the bottom line, it is the most important thing in terms of what I'm talking about today. But you're also going to improve the quality of your life, I would argue, by being slim anyway. So I know what you mean. I know exactly what you're saying. What I've just put forward is not why I'm disagreeing with you on this. I'm disagreeing with a little bit of what you said, because we still need to recognize beauty. We still cannot deny what's beautiful, which is a different subject entirely. But that's that whole, when I was going on about beauty is actually objective, even though everyone acts like it's subjective, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, yes, but no, because there are people that other people find beautiful, and they are heralded by lots of people as being beautiful. And just the fact that that can exist, that 100 people can find one other person beautiful and 100 people agree, just the fact that that can exist, which you can see everywhere, just the fact that can exist, I'm really messing up my words, but that in itself, just by virtue of it being true, completely disproves this theory that beauty is subjective. Beauty can't be objective if lots of people can find one person beautiful. If beauty was subjective, you'd only occasionally spot someone you'd find beautiful, and your friends or other people, your peers, would hardly agree if beauty was subjective. But because beauty is truthfully objective, Lots of people can agree that this certain trait, this certain physical part of the appearance, even this personality aspect of the personality, that is beautiful, that is attractive. The fact that we can agree on what's attractive means that beauty is objective, it is not subjective. Make sense? So I agree with you, Viv, that health should be the thing that's heralded. But what we're doing right now is we're pulling beautiful, slim people off advertisements to put people that are less attractive, demonstrably, might not be to everyone's taste, but broadly speaking, less attractive. They are, in many cases, overweight. We're putting those people now on a pedestal. So beauty is the differential there. Beauty is the thing that's changed there, not just the health side. So again, you can be beautiful without being healthy as well. So that's where I'd agree with you again. But do you see the difference there? I haven't explained my point well. Hopefully you follow anyway. Tom says, I agree there, my friend. Not sure what that's on, Tom, because that comment was probably a while ago, but thanks for your feedback. The Greeks and Romans did it in statues 2,000 plus years ago. Yeah, that's a reasonable point as well. It'd be interesting to see what our statues look like in another 100, 200, 5,000 years, eh? I think it's actually excuses in the West. The focus is on hedonism rather than discipline. That's true as well. That's what I was talking about, the difference with Eastern Europe. And not to get too historical, but what you could say about Eastern Europe, and this is what maybe a historian might, I'm saying they might say, I'm not speaking for historians, I'm not saying I'm a historian. What a historian might say, and I have heard historians say this, is that because Eastern Europe has experienced poverty, has experienced war more recently than Western Europe, they treat rights and responsibilities very differently to how we might do here in the UK and other parts of Western Europe. If you follow along with this idea, the idea being that here in the UK, we now have lots of rights and fewer responsibilities. In Eastern Europe, although no doubt it'll come this way too in Eastern Europe, there is less right, more responsibility culturally. And we can talk about how this has evolved, but I do think maybe the recency of wars and poverty has probably helped this too, has probably rather encouraged this too. So again, I might be going away from your point here, Kombucha Bee, and what a username that is, but hopefully you follow me. And so just talking about the difference between Eastern and Western Europe, because I think there is a marked difference between the cultures of Eastern and Western Europe. And again, I'm speaking generally. You can find differences between the UK and France, and you can find differences, I'm sure, between Czech Republic and Croatia, and Ukraine. But in Eastern Europe, there does tend to be this feeling when you go there that people are more responsible and accountable for their actions. Crime is lower. General skullduggery felt a lot lower in a lot lower in Prague. Though I didn't once feel threatened in Prague. You walk around London or a major city here in the UK, you're on edge. I'm speaking for myself, but you're on edge. Crime's a lot higher. And many kinds of crime as well. Many people think I'm talking about just terrorism. No, many kinds of crime, a great deal higher. And so, I don't know, I'm going off my train of thought a little bit here, but my argument is the rights responsibilities thing. I think there's something to that. So I agree, hedonism, big here in the West. Has that been fueled by the fact that we have so much freedom and maybe we forgot what that freedom means and the price and the cost of that freedom and how one, in order to create that freedom, must act in a responsible manner and develop society in a certain way? Is Eastern Europe more fresh in that transformation, that it remembers values and puts those values on a pedestal? Maybe. I think so. What do you think? Let me know. I absolutely think so. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said it. So I do agree with you. Excuse making in the West, hedonism in the West. But I really, really think it's because of what we now accept. It's because of wider values of society. And I do think Eastern Europe will come this way, by the way. I really do. People equate anything they don't like to hear as hate speech. Amen, don't they just? Awful. Kay Kelly, I'm from England and live in the USA. Oh, you've had an interesting experience, I'm sure, then, Kay, in what we're talking about here. The additives in foods over here is insane. It is, actually, yes, it's even worse. Everyone is hooked and the fast food is so convenient. We need to do better, go back to basics. People need to cook. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Kay says may be able to get away with it socially, but health-wise we will not get away with it too long. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay, Tom, there is fast food everywhere. Food is always focal for all gatherings. You know, that second point, food is focal point for all gatherings, I think that's probably true. That seems to be true globally because of the traditional story, that's not the right term, that comes with food, that comes with eating, celebration, and so on. So that's the case everywhere. Interesting though that there's different rates of obesity everywhere. So it's not a problem really on paper that food is used to celebrate. It's fairly natural. It's fairly inbuilt within our society, isn't it? And that stems back many civilizations, many generations and civilizations. But the problem is what food we're using. The problem is how frequently we then do things like that. That's the issue. I think fueled by the culture. I'm definitely missing comments here, folks, not on purpose. The chat's just jumping. It used to be the rich and wealthy that was fat and unhealthy. I spoke about this. That's a nice little rhyme, by the way. I don't know if you meant that intentionally. But I spoke about this on my live stream earlier on. Perhaps not so many people that are watching now actually caught where I talked about this. But yeah, absolutely true. Obesity is growing everywhere. Obesity is growing globally and in lots of developing countries as well. So that's really important to know. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I speak about this briefly in Natural Foods, which in another 10 years, my Natural Foods book, which I only originally wrote, and I've done several editions of it, only originally wrote, it's just an ebook, folks, it's not a publisher's job, but I originally wrote that 2017, I think, so 3 years ago, around this time, 3 years ago. That'll be out of date in 10 years, because in there, I do put forward the argument that, of course, wealthier countries do have more of an obesity problem, which they absolutely do. On the whole, there are exceptions, but on the whole, they absolutely do. But yeah, the accessibility and affordability of junk food, it's changing so much. Access to cheap processed foods has increased. Yeah, I gave the example about a pack of biscuits, pack of cookies and fruit earlier and berries earlier. It's just so different. Tom says, I had a heart attack at a young age, started with a potato diet, then varied it, found you on YouTube, and I'm doing well. Blood pressure has dropped at my near good weight. Really pleased to hear, Tom. Well done on your turnaround. Great for you. Heart attack at 34. Wow, was my lifestyle. It usually is. 100% agree with your response to my comment. Viv, was that all? Which one was that? Health is the bottom line, looks aside. That's where I was talking about beauty. Well, thanks, Viv. I'm glad you can actually understand what I was saying, because at various points I couldn't understand where I was going with it. But yeah, I think you got the point. I think there was a few points in there. Isn't a calorie deficit counterproductive for someone with the past of anorexia? Potentially, not always, but potentially. It depends what stage you're now at and how you associate with that former those former behaviours and identity of yourself. It's definitely a big grey area. It's definitely something that we don't want to be laissez-faire with, that's for sure. After having gained weight due to adaptive thermogenesis, wanting to get ripped without eating disorder behaviours. Yeah, I mean, I really don't know anything about your situation, but if it was me, with the knowledge I now have, if it was me in your shoes, I really wouldn't be concerned about weight loss right now in the grand scheme of things. Kombucha B, you're right. Ari, the East versus West mindset. They work harder, quote unquote, as they have to. Yeah. Also value more traditional values. Yeah. Again, in the UK, we've really stomped is maybe the more appropriate term, on a lot of the values that we once held dear, which is another wider conversation in itself. But you can imagine how that's affected, the areas of health and weight management and nutrition and fitness and whatnot. We're like I said, this is why I'm pretty defeatist on it, because I can't see a good way back in the UK at least. Do you have experience with intermittent fasting for targeting belly fat reduction? First thing I must say to you, Joseph, is you cannot target fat in a particular area of your body. It goes from everywhere at once. You might be seeing belly fat right now. If you're seeing some belly fat on yourself, well, everyone has got belly fat. Everyone's got some degree of fat. If you're seeing belly fat, if you're noticing rather lots of belly fat, you've also got a bunch of fat elsewhere, but for some reason you're noticing your belly more. There might be many reasons for that. fat gets stored everywhere. It gets stored in the fingers, it gets stored in the face, it gets stored around the ankles. There are some places, difference between the genders on this as well, where men and women are likely to store more fat, where you might store more fat because of a genetic predisposition, but you're going to store fat everywhere. So you can't just target it in one area. Just doing intermittent fasting isn't going to guarantee that you only get rid of belly fat and no fat elsewhere. It doesn't work like that. You need to lose fat everywhere, is what I would say to you. Can intermittent, to answer your question perhaps more appropriately or more usefully, can intermittent fasting help you do that? Get rid of fat everywhere? Yeah, it can. Is it a go-to for me and my clients? No, very rarely do I use it nowadays. There was a time where maybe 2 in 10 clients would use it. It's become less and less necessary to me nowadays. Really now, the only clients that ever really practice it with me, they don't practice it every day, and it's only because they really, really want to, and it makes sense for their schedule, and they really, really like the mental clarity and focus that not eating in the morning can offer. Aside from that, none of my clients do it anymore. So I hardly used it in the first place, but I use it less and less. So no, I don't think it's necessary. Could it be an important tool? Yeah, because having an eating window can allow you to lower your calories without too much effort. So it can work, but there's nothing inherently magical, I would argue, about the fasting, not that we know of anyway. Lots of people cite, that it's better, purport that it's better for, levels of growth hormone, yada, 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 and various other things, but, and hormonally. But, the science on that, we're a couple of years off, I would say, before we make any massive conclusions about that. Does it certainly have benefits? Yeah, for sure. Someone else has just asked, Bogdan, do you have any tips for reducing belly fat? I haven't got tips for reducing belly fat. I've got tips for reducing fat, which will be belly fat, it will be chest fat, it will be leg fat, it will be everywhere. We need to clear this up, folks. You can't spot reduce. You can't just get rid of fat in a certain area. I keep losing weight, which I am happy about, but would like to target my belly fat. No, if possible. It's absolutely not possible. Any tips and tricks? So again, I've got a bunch of tips and tricks for losing weight. I've got 600 plus videos, Bogdan, on my channel. So please, once we're done here, check out some of my other videos and I will absolutely teach you how to do that. First step, get yourself on a fiber-rich plant foods diet. That is going to change your life. You want to get rid of some fat? That's going to help you. Obviously, you have to take the right steps. I'm giving very simplistic advice there, but that's step number one. There's a lot more detail after that. But if you're not doing that, get yourself a lot of fiber in your diet, lots of whole plant foods, some whole grains like brown rice and oats and quinoa and bulgur wheat, some legumes like our beans, peas and lentils, lots of fruits, veggies and the tubers such as potatoes and sweet potatoes and yams, and you will be good to go, my friend. A couple of nuts and seeds from time to time, some of those healthy fats. They can be less helpful for weight loss because they're fat and calorie content, but they're still part of a weight loss encouraging diet, still certainly part of a healthy diet, so get some of those in too, and you'll be good to go. That'll be a good start. After that, maybe you have to consider a couple of other things. Maybe you have to think about exercise more so. Exercise is really important, but that would be my first step for you. What are your thoughts on core beliefs which sabotage weight loss? Most say they want to lose weight, which is to look more attractive. The negative thoughts, such as I always fail at things, hinders you. There's lots of causes of self-sabotage. The one big trend I would say is that I think self-sabotage is, I'm going to speak broadly here because I can think of a lot of exceptions to what I'm about to say, but I'll say it anyway. I think the main reason for self-sabotage, let me get my wording right. I think the number one reason why people self-sabotage is because they don't truly feel deserving of weight loss success. I think that's the bottom line. When you don't feel deserving of something, you subconsciously sabotage, which is what self-sabotage is. You subconsciously hurt your efforts because you don't want to leave your comfort zone, because you don't feel deserving of the end outcome, which your conscious brain is working towards, but the rest of your thinking, the rest of your psyche isn't in agreement on. And so the self-sabotage sneaks in as you start to leave that comfort zone, as you get to the point where you start progressing and then realize, oh no, I actually haven't earned this. I don't deserve this. I'm not entitled to this. I think self-sabotage is usually, not always, an entitlement issue. I think when you feel entitled, you don't self-sabotage, subconsciously at least, as much. This sort of gets into the definitions of what self-sabotage is. I actually have a lot of problems with other people's definitions of self-sabotage. let's not get into that one here. But Gerard will know. It's in the academy. It's one of my audio trainings. I talk about self-sabotage and I break down sort of the ins and the outs of what I've just said there. But I think the biggest thing is the entitlement. When you don't feel deserving of success, I think that's when you self-sabotage. Other causes too, but that's the biggest one that I see. So you got to start feeling deserving of weight loss success. How do you start feeling deserving of weight loss success? There's no cheat code. You have to go out and earn it in the same way that, you know, building your self-esteem takes time. You don't just give yourself confidence overnight. Confidence follows competence. Esteem follows competence, okay? Feeling deserving follows success. As you get more successful, you feel more deserving. You feel more entitled to that success that you've accrued, and the success that you further want in the future. And so the way you feel deserving is by being successful. And it's a feedback loop, okay? A reason why you might not feel deserving of weight loss success right now is because you've never experienced weight loss success. It's because you've been so far away from weight loss success. So why would you feel deserving? It's only natural that you feel undeserving. The problem is, even with your best intentions, even though you say to yourself, I want to lose weight, you get to a point where your subconscious attacks your conscious, corrupts your efforts because it doesn't like it, because it doesn't feel as though it's ready for that change and ready for that success. And so what you've got to do is be so hyper aware of this that as you're progressing in your weight loss journey, you can see the sabotage potentially coming, and that you're aware of this and you don't just give into it, and that you see it happening because you can't stop it, but you at least stay vigilant to it, and therefore you can progress with some, I don't know, with some what? I don't know, with some, I suppose the word I was going for is sort of strength and power over your own actions so that you're not susceptible to that self-sabotage. When you're aware, you can be sort of stronger in your conscious efforts, okay? When you're not aware of how these issues are trying to get at you and how your beliefs are holding you back, you are just, you are weak to those attacks. Whereas when you have awareness, consciousness, I do this because of this. In the past, I failed to lose weight because of this issue to do with my thinking and my beliefs and my psyche, because of my mindset, because of my attitude. When you have just a little more awareness, you can see things coming, you can be more vigilant, you can have more strength as you step forward on your weight loss journey. Make sense? How do you feel deserving? Success. You start losing weight, you'll start feeling more deserving. It's okay that you don't feel deserving. Know that it will come. There is that light at the end of the tunnel. There's no cheat code. You have to work at it. The eating disorder is many years in the past. Just want to lose weight healthily without... oh, okay, I see, lowering metabolism again. Well, I suppose the problem is now you've got this fear and you're hyper aware of leaning back into your behaviors of the past, which so you should be. But the one thing I would say to you is just look how much you've changed in this time, because no doubt you have. It seems like from your comments you have, although I don't have that much context, but no doubt you have. And realize that you're a person with different values, thoughts, behaviors, a different identity than last time. And hopefully that gives you a bit more strength and confidence that you can do it this time, and that you can recognize when you might well take things too far. Yeah, you do have this history, but it's just that. Your history, it's not your current. You've changed massively. Different habits, as I say, different values, different beliefs, different behaviors, different thought processes, a different identity overall. And so have some, I appreciate your wariness. Do be wary, absolutely. But you're a different person now. So hopefully that gives you, I don't know, a bit of confidence to execute on this. And then the other thing, it's very obvious, but just don't have a massive calorie deficit, which is pretty much what I say to everyone. And just be hyper aware of when you do maybe lean into some behaviors that caused you issues in the past. But like I say, that's a different you. That's an old you. You need to separate that person from the modern day you. I don't think you're ever going to be able to successfully do this if you keep clinging on to, I'm not saying you are doing this, but if you kept clinging on to, you know, a self-identity, a sense of self that was based around, you know, your anorexia or eating disorders. I don't think you'll ever be able to do this. You need to separate, acknowledge that that is your history, but that it's just that, and separate, realize that these are two different people. Again, I know some of this sounds very conceptual. Realize these are two different people. I think that will give you a bit more trust in doing it this time as a quote-unquote new person, which Yeah, okay, it sounds a bit woo-woo, sounds a bit sort of lovey-dovey, but you are. Bogdan, I started eating plant-based around 1 month ago. Great, welcome. I'm reducing meat consumption to once a week for now, and then I will stop eating meat, and also I'm eliminating dairy slowly out of the diet. Yeah, one thing you could do to really speed things up is just get rid of it. And I challenge you to do that, you know, from every standpoint, from a health, from a weight loss, from very importantly an ethical standpoint. I'm just going to give you I'm going to put you on the spot here, Bogdan. What's stopping you? You've already done so well, my friend. You're already obviously making loads of progress. You've acknowledged that you want to eat less and less of these things. So what's stopping you from going all in? Let me give you that challenge right now. I'd love if you could answer me on that. What really stops you? Tom, I make my own peanut butter and sometimes do hummus. Is this a bad thing? Or is it like always moderation? I add no oil at all. Well, great. The fact that you add no oil really changes my answer, because that's definitely that's part of the criteria. That would sort of swing my answer on this if you used oil in both of those things. So great that you don't. Yeah, definitely you can use these things. I don't know anything about your goals, Tom, what you're looking to achieve. If it's weight loss, let's say it is because you're here on my channel. These fat-rich plant foods, like the hummus because it's made from tahini, like the nut butters, like avocados, like straight up nuts and seeds before they're even processed into butters. These foods can be eaten. They're just not that effective for weight loss. They can really slow down weight loss. In many cases, they can lead to weight gain. And so you don't want to go crazy with them. Does that mean you need to be fearful of them and avoid them altogether? I argue not, but you don't want to go crazy. I think my MO on this really is very basic, but treat those things like a garnish, a supplement, if you will, to the rest of your lower fat meals, let's say. And that's a good way to do it. So yeah, you can have those things, Tom, but I don't really know anything about your goals. Again, there are some people that maybe they want to gain weight or they're just maintaining weight. There's a lot of people that can lose weight eating a decent chunk of these. So I don't want to say everyone's different, because that sounds really cliche, because everyone isn't different, but everyone's different in terms of their goals and where they are now, and that will change my answer. Does that make sense? But generally, yeah, have these things. Like you say, do it in moderation, don't go wild, because from a weight loss perspective, they can really slow you down. I suppose hummus is quite different to peanut butter, because hummus, the tahini part of it, so that really fat-rich part of it, it's very diluted in amongst the chickpeas, the lemon, whatever else you put in there. Whereas with peanut butter, you're getting such a huge hit of fats in the peanut butter versus the hummus. So hummus is already very diluted. So then we can get into a debate about which fat-rich plant foods are better or worse, quote unquote, than others for weight loss. Like avocados have a much lower calorie density than nuts and seeds. So again, a lot of people put all the fats into one category. Oh, stay away from those, don't have those so often. It's like, well, what fat are we talking about? Because they've all got varying degrees. So when you start looking at the details, which I don't think you need to just do just yet, Tom, I don't know anything about you or your goals. When you get to the details is really like the last 10 pounds stage. That's where you want to get a bit more micro-analytical, let's say. You're not at that point yet, I would guess. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you don't need to look at that. But just know that there are those details there. You can really get into the nuances. Sorry, guys, I'm not being disgusting here. I've got a really itchy nose all of a sudden. And it's on the outside of my nose. What else have we got here? Target is to get... Oh, here we go. It's Bogdan again. Good man. Target is to get fully plant-based around January, February next year. Being in the UK as well, I'm very happy you found your channel. What are you waiting on, Bogdan? You're pretty much doing it now, my friend. You're pretty much doing it now. I want to challenge you right now. Why don't you do it for a week? Here's what I'm going to do, Bogdan. Here's what I'm going to do for you on the spot right now. I am going to get you to contact me on Instagram. If you don't have Instagram, this is no excuse. Download it. It takes 2 seconds. My username is @RyanAdamsUK, Bogdan. That's @RyanAdamsUK. If you miss it, or if I said it too fast, you can go click on my channel. There's an Instagram link. I want you to send me a message there. From there, I'm going to give you my personal email address. From there, I'm going to ask you for the next 7 days to take a photo of every meal you eat and send me that. And if they are fully plant-based, if there is not a single animal product in sight, I'll ask you to give me an ingredients list. I'm going to trust your transparency and honesty here. I've got no reason to think you'll lie to me on this. If I see you do all of that for 7 days, you're going to get a starter bundle, which contains 4 of my best-selling products, entirely for free for that 7 days. So if you go fully plant-based, no animal products, so in effect vegan, for these 7 days, I'm going to give you that for free. And that's just going to be my little sort of challenge to you. If you want to take me up on it, at Ryan Adams UK on Instagram. If you don't, fair enough. But I want to challenge you to do this. You're so close. Why wait to January, February? You already know that what you want to do this. You're already very close to doing this. You already hardly have meat and dairy anyway. Why January and February? And I'm, not to pick on you, Bogdan, but so many people do this. So many people say, oh, I'll wait for the perfect time. There isn't one. You'll never feel ready. You'll never feel prepared. You have to take action right now. Kombucha B. If you've been successful with weight loss on 2 to 3 times and had much attention, however, as you say, you felt weak, how to strengthen your mind? Sorry, I don't know what you mean. I don't get the question. I'm really sorry if I'm missing something obvious. If you have been successful with weight loss on 2 to 3 times, so 2 to 3 occasions, and had much attention, however, as you say, you felt weak, how to strengthen your mind? Sorry, can you I think I'm missing something in the second, after the and. What do you mean? I presume you mean another word and not attention. Apologies if I'm not getting it. But if you can clarify. Bogdan, go for this. Yes, Bogdan, come on. No time like the present. Absolutely right. Folks, we've been going 75 minutes here, so I'm going to love you and leave you. You got the link in the description if you want to pick up any of my products. Bogdan, you're going to contact me, no doubt, on Instagram, my friend. I look forward to hearing from you there. I'm giving you no easy out here. I'm giving you no easy out. I know this, the first 45 minutes or so of this was all over the shop, but hopefully I put forward a good argument as to why you need to resist your culture and why this is probably really stopping you right now. The culture you're in is maybe, certainly if you're in the West anyway, really holding you back from weight loss success right now. This was harsh. This was most certainly politically incorrect. But I don't care. It needed to be said. And I know a lot of people, even though they might not outwardly say it, probably agreed with a bunch I said on this. So I would welcome your thoughts, your opinions, positive or negative. I want to hear from you if you agree or disagree on this. Just to go back to that earlier point for anyone joining, at an individual level, the reason why you're not slim is obviously about the food, seconded by the exercise, but the culture has allowed you to get away with a lot. The culture you live has allowed you to get away with a lot. Maybe that's your culture, your own standards and expectations. Maybe that's your friends and family. Maybe it's the wider culture as a whole, what you're seeing on television, what's reinforced in schools, yada, 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 government, blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is, all that stimulus, all that information you're taking in every day from your environment, you really are a byproduct of it. And so from a weight loss perspective, you've got to be very resistant to that so you can have massive success. The UK is royally, excuse my language, but it's true, screwed from a weight loss point of view. It really is. So if you're a fellow Brit, and I think this absolutely applies to my friends across the pond who have an even higher statistic of obesity, and certainly numbers of overweight folk as well, but certainly obesity in terms of the numbers I gave earlier, we can pretty objectively say this applies to you too. The cultures in which we live, very, very dangerous. From a weight management, from a health perspective, you have to be resistant to it. Not only is being overweight acceptable in the UK, it is actually put on this weird, bizarre pedestal in pursuit of diversity. We've gone so backwards with these things. Absolute nightmare. The only way to escape it is to move or fix your mindset. It's not practical that everyone moves, so fix your mindset, create that bubble of excellence, be resistant to all this nonsense around you, all this ideology around you, all this untruth around you. Be strong in yourself. You know you want to do this. You owe it to yourself. So yeah, stay strong and keep going, I suppose is my message. Thanks, folks. Speak very